Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Frank Salazar. I'm 45, and for nearly a decade, I was the quiet architect behind everything that worked at Crawford & Wynn LLP, a mid-sized but high-powered law firm nestled in the glass towers of downtown Denver. I didn't wear the sharpest suits or sit in on big legal strategy meetings. But my work? It ran everything. The attorneys billed their hours, tracked client expenses, generated court-mandated reports, all through the custom-built platform I spent 8 years designing and perfecting. Then Trevor Lawson walked in. Newly minted CTO. Silicon Valley smirk. Harvard MBA. The kind of guy who speaks in buzzwords like synergy and digital transformation. He didn't ask about my system, didn't even try to understand it. Within 2 weeks, he made the call. We're migrating to CloudNext Legal Suite. It's scalable, industry standard, and future-ready. Your legacy system is being decommissioned. Legacy system? My system had tracked over $100 million in billing without a single loss. During federal cases, when other firms scrambled, mine delivered flawless compliance. Legacy? No. It was the backbone. And he was ripping it out. They didn't even ask me to help with the transition. Trevor brought in a third-party implementation team, handed me a severance envelope, and told me I should take this as an opportunity to evolve. I nodded. Smiled even. But inside, I was breaking. I had given that firm my all. When my wife passed, they became my world. I worked through grief. Through weekends. I built something that made their chaos manageable. And in the end, I was escorted out like I was some outdated printer. They didn't just fire me. They erased me. Or so they thought. When the elevator doors closed behind me for the last time, I didn't feel free. I felt hollow. They hadn't just cut me out, they erased me. No farewell lunch. No firm-wide email. Just a 5-minute HR meeting and a blank stare from the receptionist as I handed in my badge. 8 years gone like smoke in the wind. That night, I didn't eat. Didn't sleep. I just sat in my apartment, surrounded by backup drives, printed schematics, code notebooks, and whiteboard sketches that once meant something. All that work. All that sacrifice. I missed birthdays. Lost friendships. And for what? A LinkedIn footnote? Trevor's words rang in my head, it's not personal. Just business evolution. That line kept repeating as I scrolled through tech job listings that paid half my former salary. As I stared at an empty inbox. As I realized how quiet the world becomes when your usefulness is stripped away. I tried convincing myself it was a blessing. That I could finally rest, maybe even start the consulting firm I'd dreamed about. But the truth? I was ashamed. Humiliated. Replaced by a product demo and a smug smile. And it wasn't just Trevor. The silence from the partners, the people who had once called me essential, was worse. Not a single one reached out. Not even David Crawford, who had personally asked me to save the billing records during the Reynolds compliance scandal 2 years ago. I kept that data intact while other firms paid 6-figure penalties. He hugged me that day. Now. Nothing. I deleted the Crawford & Wynn email account from my phone, but I couldn't delete the feeling of betrayal. The following week, I sat in a cafe, nursing a lukewarm coffee, watching people laugh and work like nothing in the world had changed. I had resumes saved in draft folders, LinkedIn messages left unanswered. Every time I tried to write a cover letter, my fingers froze. How do you explain that your life's work had been dismissed with the stroke of a contract? But that morning, something shifted. A familiar voice echoed through the cafe. Frank. I looked up. Jennifer Castillo. Senior paralegal. Smart. Loyal. Kind. I thought that was you, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. You disappeared. I was asked to, I replied. My tone was bitterer than I intended. She didn't flinch. Just said, it's chaos over there. They replaced your system with that Cloud.Next thing, and everything's falling apart. No one knows where anything is. I stayed quiet, but my heart thudded. She leaned in. I shouldn't be saying this, but Trevor has no idea how law firms work. He's treating us like a tech startup. Deadlines are slipping, clients are panicking. And, there's a rumor. They lost some billing data. From Morrison. Morrison. That was the firm's largest active case. Class action litigation spanning 3 states, dozens of lawyers, and hundreds of thousands of billable hours. My system had that case tagged, backed up, and air-gapped with military precision. If Cloud.Next couldn't find the data. You know, Jennifer said gently, I always thought you deserved better than the way they treated you. I told Virginia, before she retired, that you were the reason this place ran. That name hit a nerve. Virginia Wynne. The founding partner. The one who gave me a chance when my startup collapsed. She believed in people, not products. But she had retired. Left the firm to her son and his visionary CTO. Now I was watching the empire she built crumble from a cafe window. Jennifer touched my hand. They made a mistake, Frank. Everyone knows it. I nodded, trying not to let the emotion show. But inside? Something ignited. Not rage. Not yet. But a spark. A reminder. They may have replaced me. But they couldn't replace what I built. And soon enough, they'd come crawling back. And this time, I wouldn't come cheap. The next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about what Jennifer said. Morrison case data, gone. That wasn't a glitch. That was a lawsuit waiting to happen. And I knew the firm. I knew that if they couldn't produce those billing records, sanctions would follow. Maybe even disbarment for a partner or two. So when Jennifer called 2 days later, her voice shaking, I wasn't surprised. Frank, I know you're not on payroll, but, can we talk? I was already grabbing my coat. Back in the same cafe, she laid it out. They've been down for almost 48 hours. Cloud.Next can't restore the billing records. Trevor's blaming legacy data corruption. I almost laughed. My legacy data was backed up 6 ways from Sunday, I said. Nothing got corrupted. They just didn't understand how it worked. Jennifer leaned in. We still have one of your backup machines. IT didn't wipe it. Someone had the sense to pull it from the network before the migration. That someone just became my new favorite person. They want to bring you back, quietly, she said. Consulting, just for this crisis. What's your rate? My smile was slow and cold. $300 an hour. No discounts. Her eyes widened. You're serious? They fired me to save money. Now they can pay market price to fix the mess. That afternoon, I walked back into Crawford and went like a ghost haunting the house that tried to burn me down. The hallways were quiet, tense. No jokes. No laughter. Just stress, frustration, and the unmistakable scent of desperation. They'd set me up in a side conference room. The old workstation hummed to life like it had been waiting for me. It took 12 minutes to retrieve the Morrison data. 12. Meanwhile, Cloud.Next's support line was still escalating to Tier 3. Jennifer watched the data stream onto the printer with wide eyes. You just saved our asses. This isn't the end, I said. This is the beginning. And I meant it. Because that night, I started digging. I didn't trust coincidence. Trevor's arrogance. The rushed migration. The secrecy around the CloudNext deal. None of it added up. Using my admin-level credentials, still active on a few shadow systems, they forgot to kill, I pulled internal procurement memos, vendor contracts, and IT logs from the last 6 months. Then I saw it. CloudNext wasn't just a vendor. It was a subsidiary of Strategix Consulting, the same firm Trevor worked for before joining Crawford & Wynn. It wasn't about efficiency. It wasn't about innovation. It was about nepotism. Kickbacks. Favors. Trevor had pushed my system out not because it failed, but because it worked too well. Too quietly. Too reliably. There was no PowerPoint deck for stability. No flashy headlines in legal tech blogs about boring software that just works. He needed to prove something. To the partners. To Strategix. Maybe even to himself. I read the contract again. A 5-year commitment, $850,000 per year. Non-refundable implementation fee of $220,000. And this gem, performance guarantees waived pending client-side infrastructure compatibility. They'd signed a deal with no safety net. Worse. Strategix used that same contract at 3 other firms I recognized. I called in a favor with an old IT buddy at Renner & Thomas. Sure enough, they'd had a catastrophic data failure 2 months earlier. CloudNext was the common factor. Trevor wasn't just incompetent. He was dirty. And suddenly, this wasn't just business anymore. It was war. I stayed in that conference room well past midnight. Not out of duty, but because the fire inside me had finally reached full blaze. They tossed me out to impress investors. To score points with partners. To cut a backroom deal and make me look obsolete. But what they forgot. You don't scrap the architect and expect the building to stand. Trevor Lawson's little tech coup wasn't just arrogance. It was fraud. And I had the receipts to prove it. By 1 a.m., I had started my master folder. I named it simply, Truth. Inside. Every email he sent recommending CloudNext. Every performance report that compared my system's uptime to theirs. The full contract Strategix signed, with language no board should have accepted. And the kicker, metadata showing Trevor had personally altered internal projections to oversell the benefits of the migration. I also had logs showing when the Morrison data was lost, 20 minutes after the CloudNext sync began. My backups had still been active when their system overwrote the primary instance. That wasn't a transition error. That was sabotage. And yet, he had the audacity to tell the partners everything was under control. So I crafted my own control. By Friday, I had met with Jennifer twice more. She helped me quietly get what I needed: audit records, paralegal access logs, even internal memos from attorneys complaining that CloudNext felt clunky or kept freezing during client reviews. All of it was building towards something big. I drafted a full internal report. Not a rant. Not a hit piece. A forensic timeline. The system transition dates. Corresponding drop in productivity. Loss of critical data. Estimated revenue lost during outages. My system's performance metrics for comparison. And finally, a projected 3-month recovery cost if CloudNext remained in place. Then came the cherry on top, a quote from a CloudNext rep promising, in writing, that all migrations are seamless and 100% compatible. Followed by the internal notes where Trevor admitted that some data types may need to be omitted. I laid the documents out like evidence in a court case. Because that's what it was. He wanted to play CTO. Fine. I'd make him stand trial for every decision he made. I didn't stop there. I reached out to Virginia Wynn. She'd retired, sure. But she still sat on the firm's advisory board. Still had power. And she loved this firm. When I called her, she answered on the second ring. Frank, she said, surprise in her voice. I've been meaning to call you. What they did was wrong, I finished. And I think you should see something. I didn't send her all the files. Just the summary report and a screenshot showing Cloud.Nex's total system crashed during the Morrison sync. 10 minutes later, she called back. You're meeting with the full board Monday at 10 a.m. Trevor had no idea what was coming. That weekend, I upgraded my consulting proposal. I offered to fully restore the original system, within 48 hours. Modernized. Streamlined. More secure than ever. All for a modest retainer and my now official hourly rate, $300. A week earlier, I'd been unemployed. Now, I was the only person holding the firm together. Trevor thought I was just a tech guy. He forgot, I built this place from the inside out. And now I was about to tear down every lie he built on top of me. Monday morning. 10 a.m. The partners' boardroom at Crawford & Wynn looked exactly as I remembered it, polished mahogany, gleaming floor-to-ceiling windows, a skyline view designed to impress high-paying clients and intimidate everyone else. But today, I wasn't intimidated. Today, I brought the truth. I stepped in with a single laptop, a leather folder of printed reports, and the weight of 8 years' worth of system design, loyalty, and proof. Jennifer gave me a subtle nod from the corner as I passed. The room was full. David Crawford sat at the head of the table. To his left and right, the founding partners, Patricia Santos, George Lynn, Darlene Cruz. And directly across from me, arms crossed tightly, sat Trevor Lawson. His smile was thin. His eyes said, "You're just a contractor. I run this show." I didn't speak first. David did. "Frank," he said, rising, shaking my hand. "Thank you for coming. We've reviewed your emergency support during the Morrison situation. Your work saved us from potential sanctions." "Glad I could help," I said calmly. Trevor jumped in. "Let's remember, that was an isolated glitch. Cloud.Nex has acknowledged a brief service disruption, but they're actively restoring data." I raised a hand, slow and steady. "With all due respect, I'd like to walk you through a few items before that narrative gets legs." David gestured to the screen behind me. "Go ahead." I connected my laptop. Clicked. Slide 1, Crawford & Wynn System Transition Timeline, Impacts and Irregularities. Slide 2, a side-by-side graph, my system, 99.98% uptime for 8 years. Cloud.Nex, 74% uptime in 30 days. Slide 3, email from Cloud.Nex promising zero-impact migration. Timestamped 2 weeks before the Morrison data loss. Trevor's jaw tightened. Slide 4, the internal IT ticket from the Morrison crash, with logs showing overwrite activity coming from Cloud.Nex's sync process, not legacy data corruption, as Trevor claimed. Then I dropped the bomb. Slide 5, vendor history, Strategix Consulting. I zoomed in on the detail, Trevor Lawson, former Strategix partner. Followed by the contract page showing no performance guarantees, no independent testing, and a non-refundable $220,000 onboarding fee. Gasps. Audible gasps. Trevor stammered. "This is misleading." "Yes, I worked with Strategix, but I disclosed that." "No," I interrupted. "You disclosed a previous consulting relationship. What you didn't disclose is that 3 of the Cloud.Nex executives are your former colleagues. You didn't run a system evaluation, you ran a backroom loyalty play. And it failed." I let that sit in the air. Then clicked the final slide. Slide 6, my proposal. Full system restoration. Timeline, 48 hours. Cost, 40 hours x $300 per hour equals $12,000. Maintenance plan, $5,000 monthly retainer, cancel anytime. Compare that to the Cloud.Nex contract, $850,000 annually and a system that didn't work. Trevor finally cracked. I was trying to modernize this firm. My vision was. David cut him off. We don't need a vision that buries us in regulatory failures and lost revenue, Trevor. We need systems that work. Then Patricia Santos looked him dead in the eye. And we need leadership that tells the truth. David turned to me. Frank, can you restore the system and confirm the Morrison data's integrity by tomorrow? Yes. And not just Morrison. I've recovered backups for every active case through last quarter. He looked around the room. All in favor of suspending the CloudNext contract and reinstating Frank's system? Every hand went up. Trevor didn't even try to stop them. David closed his laptop. Effective immediately, CloudNext integration is terminated. Frank, get what you need. Trevor, your administrative privileges are suspended until further notice. Trevor shot up from his chair. You can't do this, I'm the CTO. Not anymore, Patricia said coldly. You're under investigation for conflict of interest and gross negligence. Leave your badge on the table. He froze. Red-faced. Then stormed out, slamming the glass door behind him. I exhaled. 8 years of work had just been vindicated in 45 minutes. But I wasn't done. Because what they didn't know yet, was that CloudNext's failure wasn't the end of the story. There was one more twist left. And it was going to make everything that just happened look like the prelude. Restoring the old system was like turning on the lights in a house everyone thought abandoned. By the next morning, every billing record, time log, and client expense report was humming with data again. Attorneys were stunned, some walked past my workstation and just whispered, "Thank you." But something still nagged at me. That final CloudNext crash during Morrison. The sync didn't just fail. It actively overwrote, intentionally disabled, fields critical to federal compliance reports. And that couldn't have been accidental. I needed proof. I reanalyzed the sync logs, my backups had recorded everything, even during the so-called transition. What I found chilled me. There was a data suppression script embedded inside the CloudNext sync package, a script that targeted fields used for partner profit allocation and expense ratio calculations. That wasn't negligence. That was malice. And when I checked the signature on the script's build, it matched a Strategix developer Trevor used to work with. It was clear now. Trevor wasn't just kicking me out for a vendor swap, he was erasing internal records to hide misappropriated funds. The expense ratio fields he targeted? They were the same ones used in quarterly audits to determine bonus payouts. And then came the twist that flipped it all. While combing through the backup metadata, I found a string of irregular edits that had occurred 2 weeks before the CloudNext migration. Edits to expense records. Adjustments to travel reimbursements. Shifts in client origination credits. In short, Trevor had started modifying partner data before the system swap. The migration? That was just the cover-up. I printed a full audit trail and emailed it, securely, to David Crawford and Patricia Santos. Then I called Jennifer. Have they started the forensic review yet? No, Trevor's still denying everything. Says it's sour grapes. Why? Tell David to check his inbox. I just sent him the real reason Trevor pushed the migration. It wasn't strategy. It was fraud. 30 minutes later, David called me himself. Frank, are you absolutely sure these logs are authentic? They're signed by the system. Time-stamped. Immutable. And they show a consistent pattern of tampering, right up to the day Trevor brought in Strategix. Silence. Then, we're calling an emergency meeting with legal. If this holds, he's looking at criminal charges. But I wasn't done. Because while they were preparing for war, I made another move. I contacted 2 other firms I knew had been burned by CloudNext and Strategix. I offered to provide forensic analysis, recovery services, and expert testimony. Within 48 hours, both retained me. At $500 an hour. And the press? I didn't leak anything, but somehow, an anonymous tip made its way to a legal tech blog. The headline read, "Ex-CTO of Crawford & Wynn under review for alleged fraud amidst cloud software collapse." Trevor's LinkedIn profile went silent that day. But my inbox? It exploded. The board didn't hesitate. Once the audit logs I uncovered were verified, the managing partners moved fast. By Friday, Trevor Lawson was escorted out of Crawford & Wynn by security. Not just suspended, terminated with cause. The forensic accountants found exactly what I warned them about: expense padding, altered reimbursements, and manipulated origination credits totaling nearly $210,000 in bonus fraud. Worse? The migration was intended to overwrite every trace of it. They handed everything over to the Colorado Bar Association and federal investigators. And from what I heard, Trevor's next opportunity in Phoenix vanished before he could even book a flight. But this wasn't just about one man's fall. It was about restoration. I spent the next month rebuilding Crawford & Wynn's infrastructure from the ground up. I didn't just bring the old system back, I evolved it. Smarter backups. Predictive analytics. Faster reporting modules. I even added a visual dashboard for the partners so they'd never again depend on someone else's spreadsheet to understand their firm. David pulled me aside one day after a board meeting. "You know," he said, "I thought hiring Trevor was the modern choice. Flashy, bold, cutting edge. But we needed you. Not just because you knew the system, because you understood what made this place work." I nodded. And then he asked the question I never expected. "Would you come back? Full-time. CTO. Name your title. Name your salary." I smiled. Not out of pride, but peace. "I appreciate that, David. But I think the consulting arrangement is better for both of us. You get the system. I get the freedom." He laughed. "So, you're too valuable now?" "No," I said. "Just finally aware of my worth." 6 months later, I was managing 5 law firms across 3 states, all running on variations of my platform. I no longer feared being replaced by a shiny demo or a Harvard MBA with a whiteboard. Because the industry had changed. They didn't want buzzwords anymore. They wanted results. And then came the final twist. Virginia Wynn called me. She'd seen the article that went viral after the audit. She'd read the board minutes. And she wanted to talk. "I'm launching a new boutique firm," she said. "Ethics forward. Client focused. No noise, just clean, strong representation. I want your system at the core. Can we talk architecture?" I looked at the skyline out my window, the same one I'd stared at in despair after being fired. Except now, I wasn't outside looking in. I was building the future from the inside out. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.